a sense of community when you're free. Rolling through the mountains, rolling through the valley, rolling through paradise with me.
Hello, everyone. Well, I'd like to read something. This is from today's guest. Teaching, acting, actor, director, writer on Facebook because I have a lot of information and I share my toys. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm happy to have back on the show, Stephen Atkins. Welcome back.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm good, thank you. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Yeah, it's awfully snowy today, so I'm getting ready to head up to campus a little bit early to teach my students.
Oh, okay. So for those who are watching, by the time you see this, the weather will be past. This is what's today, February 28th. That's when I'm taping this. So
yeah, we're just stuck in, and it's really, really, yeah. I'm just looking out my window here. It's very white. I haven't seen it this way in Vancouver for a long while.
Yeah, for sure. We're getting a really late winter. At least in recent years, I think, right?
Yeah.
So now I can't remember what it was we spoke about last time. Oh, I know it was about your teaching at the at Capilano.
Yeah.
And you're also on the faculty member at former faculty member at University of Lethbridge.
Oh yeah, that was an age ago. That was ages and ages. Another lifetime.
Okay, so other than teaching, what else are you doing currently?
Well, actually, I've been very fortunate. I've been contacted by the Cantonese Opera Society of Vancouver, and very recently they've invited me to work with them on developing their new Cantonese opera. It's still in the works, but I'm always really excited about intercultural collaborations. Yeah. Having worked in Australia, briefly for little bits in the United States and quite a bit in the UK. And yeah, I'm just very excited about that. Apparently the scenario is still in formation, but it has largely to do with the idea of Chinese immigrants in Vancouver in the 1930s and 40s, and taking up the patriotic duty of fighting for Canada in the Second World War. Wow, so it's a very interesting, I think a very stirring and very emotional story for many people.
Right.
Yeah.
Because even though they fought for Canada, they weren't treated well, were they?
I think that's going to be the kind of message, although we don't want to hit people over the head with things, but it's to raise awareness. And also in this time, I think it's quite timely because there's a lot of racism and aggression towards the Chinese Canadian population because of COVID and many other reasons that I think that people, when they can relate to a story and to relate to people rather than the ideas, it changes the playing field a bit.
I sure hope so. I really, because my son lives in China and he's married to a Chinese young woman. And I'd hate the thought of, when he comes over here with his wife, that she wouldn't be treated well just because,
Yeah, there was some surprising behavior, especially during the COVID years. I was just actually quite surprised watching the news some days when they showed the surveillance videos of violence against people in the streets and completely unprovoked. It was quite shocking.
Yes, I agree with you. So changing the subject a little bit now, the first time you were on the show, you had just recently returned back from Australia, correct?
That's correct. Actually, I think we interviewed in Australia. I was in Mooloolaba.
Yes, that's right. So how long were you there in Australia?
I was just there over the Christmas break. I came back I've traveled on New Year's Eve to come home. And I've been teaching at Capilano in the spring semester since then. We've just had our reading break, actually. So the students are coming back to school refreshed, hopefully, from having had a few days off, technically reading over the last week.
So what are they supposed to be reading?
I think that this is technically, it's supposed to be kind of preparation and to renew over by midterm, because our program is very demanding. Mm-hmm. And they also have time to catch up on assignments or study for midterm examinations generally throughout the entire campus in all programs. But in our program especially, there's time to memorize lines and prepare audition pieces and monologues for projects that are coming up in the final quarter of the year. So, yeah.
Let's go. I just want to, sorry, going back and forth, but let's go back to the Cantonese, that link there. What exactly would you be doing?
I would be writing a story. And so this is very interesting for me because I have some interest, I have some background in Asian theatrical forms, and I have some knowledge about the structures. But this is completely new for me. I am a writer. I've done quite a bit of dramatic writing for different forms of theater, from everywhere from devised theater to sort of mixed and multimedia theater. But yes, working in this traditional form, what I'm doing is I'm getting the scenarios from Rosa Chen, the lead performer and the sort of the artistic director of the Vancouver Cantonese Opera Society, and she's sending me scenarios. We've barely started. I think we're right now in the kind of conceptual stages, and of course grant writing stages.
Right.
But what I'll be doing is writing the dialogue, and she's putting me in touch with the composer in Hong Kong. So I think it'd be very interesting because I'm very interested in seeing how language and music move together in this particular way. Right. Yeah.
It sounds so fascinating. It really does. Like, I just love it.
It was an eye-opener. They were kind enough to come and do a demonstration of basic skills in Chinese opera for my students as part of our performance history course at Capilano University. And I think that was actually a pinnacle event in the semester for us to have an experiential learning experience with a historical art form.
Okay. Now, as you said, you're teaching, or I said, or both of us said, you teach acting, right? Mm-hmm. You're also a director.
Yes.
So have you directed any of your own productions?
No, I don't. It's actually kind of a good idea not to direct your own writing. Okay. It's something that I advise my students as well to kind of avoid doing that. Although we've made exceptions because some of our students have really shown the desire to direct their own work. The reason why I put that caveat in there is that when you write something, you develop a kind of preciousness about it. You kind of you remember how you envisioned it when you wrote it, and it can lead you down a track. Can you lead you into a kind of self-deception? Right. And it really does help a piece to let another creative vision take it from page to stage.
Right. Yeah, and I guess it would be difficult, like almost like a struggle, if that person, that actor, wants to bring their own whatever it is to it, right, to the role.
Exactly, and that's exactly what they're supposed to do.
Yeah, right.
Otherwise, we would publish the play and let the audience read it at home.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. The actor's vision and their creative drive and with their particular method all adds to the experience, and I think writers should welcome it.
Right. Yeah. But I understand, like I was part of writing a play, like just locally, but I had to take some time away, and I found out that we were each to develop a character. And then when I was away, my character, they totally changed it. They just totally wasn't who I had created at all. And it's like, I lost all my interest. You know?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that writing process can be very hard for many people, especially in devised pieces. So a devised form of theater is one where the actors kind of create through improvisation the whole story. And you can be a very, very strong contributor to it and have invested quite a bit and then realize that you're not in the final production.
Yeah.
So it's always, one has to be a little bit egoless when you work on this. That said, the Canadian theater scene especially is becoming a lot more sort of tolerant of these types of contracts where actors are becoming content creators and so then have a stake in the final production.
Right. Yeah, for sure. I must say it's easier for, like, when I haven't done a lot of acting, but it's much easier doing somebody else's acting with something that somebody else wrote.
Yeah, it's actually it's also very hard to listen to something that you've written being performed, because I think almost every writer goes through this. You sort of go through this stage like, oh my God, did I write that? Oh, did I use that word? And you're judging yourself so harshly in the audience, and it can be difficult for the actors because they think you're judging them.
Yeah, yeah. You know, really, yeah, it is interesting. Even doing this, sometimes people say to me, you know, oh, why don't you talk this way or that way when you're interviewing? And I'm thinking, but this is who I am. I can't, you know.
Yeah.
Have your own talk show if you think it should be done differently. I have a thin skin. I must say I have a very thin skin.
I think that's the great contradiction, is that most of the people who are drawn to being performers are very thin-skinned and very empathetic. And it's in many ways kind of the wrong environment for them to be in, because you do have to work against those contradictions in your personality to do a good job.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm also very socially, I have social anxiety, which is another thing that people don't get. Oh, but you're on camera all the time. It's like two different animals, you know?
Yeah, you would be surprised how many professional actors are in exactly the same boat.
Yeah, yeah. And you know, again, we learn to adjust. We learn to be who we are, you know, quirks and all, right?
It takes a long time to become comfortable in your skin. It's very much a life journey, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I had the as a teacher, acting teacher, you know, you probably understand this. I had an acting coach who told me that he said, you're quirky, and he said, don't be, you know, that's a good thing. It's not a bad thing, right? Because prior to that, I always felt bad about who I was, or not, you know, like I didn't fit in and stuff. And he says, but you're okay to be quirky, or whatever it is you are as an actor, right? So you would, as an acting teacher, you would recognize all these things, I would think.
Yes, absolutely. So there's a couple of things that young actors and beginning actors should really keep in mind. And I feel like I can speak about these because I just observed the audition. I was sat on the audition panel and observed our early auditions for our program next year. And we had to call in a few for callbacks. It's only simply because we wanted to give them direction, or to see if they could respond to input and have that change them and change their performance. But a couple of things that are very important for young actors is, as you say, be yourself. Let all of your personality shine through the work, and let your personality interact and catalyze the words that the playwright has given you. There's no single way to do any role in any piece. And another thing would be to don't think that you have to be like a famous actor or somebody who's inspired you. We already have one of those.
Right.
What we don't have is a person like yourself. And then the third thing is that many actors think to themselves that the most important thing an actor does is to show emotion. And I often have to sort of correct young actors. This is my perspective anyway, is that an actor has to do something. They have to be trying to get something done in a scene. And any emotion that they have while doing it is right. So when you think to yourself, oh, I have to do this in a sad way, or you're concentrating too much on the emotion, that means that you're deciding which emotions are right and which emotions are wrong. And it cuts off your creativity. There are many times when you can giggle at your own futile sadness, or or feel angry and happy at the same time. There's a lot of complexity to human emotions, and so you should just let it go.
Yeah, for sure. I would think to also another thing, as a teacher, it must be really great feeling when you see somebody who's with that raw talent that you know just has whatever it is.
Yeah. There's a lot to be said for having it, or something people call it the X factor, before it became a trademarked name of a reality show. But that it factor is very important. But I also think that the most important thing for an actor to understand is technique, because it's a bit like being a chef. And I often use food analogies when I'm teaching. One can have a sense of flavor and ingredients and so forth like that. But the other thing is that you can really shine if you know technique. And that's when your expertise comes through.
Okay. Now, I just want to talk about some of the things you've done in the past, because I find it also fascinating. You were a former freelance writer at FASA Corporation.
Oh, yeah. Well, my bio on Facebook goes way too far back. I might have to edit it, but I'm actually glad that you're asking these questions. So maybe it's a good thing I left that on. FASA Corporation was a role-playing game company way back in the 1990s. And I was a very young writer. I was very interested in speculative science fiction and in cyberpunk, especially. It was the 90s, it was very dark. And I wrote some source books for this role-playing game. Now, this sounds probably to a number of people might roll their eyes. Oh, it's just Dungeons and Dragons and so forth. However, I just got back from going to a convention of people who do immersive and interactive theater. And this is either analog, meaning live performance, or virtual theater, where the audience members are actually characters in the event, and their decisions and their input has effect on the story. So it's a very interesting place to be. And the person who was running this convention at the very end, because it was filled with all kinds of media developers, film directors, theater directors, and he looked out at us and he said, all of you are experts in your field, but what you really need to do is go out and play some Dungeons and Dragons. Everything you need to know it's in those books.
I never did play. My son played for a while, you know.
Oh, I think it's fun. I think it's a really, really good thing. I mean, back in the 80s and 90s, people were very much afraid because they thought youth were taking it far too seriously. Right. I think I think that's a kind of overblown fear of something different. Yeah. But what it does do is it gives young people and all kinds of people a chance to have an inclusive environment, to understand collaboration and cooperative storytelling. And for the dungeon master, the poor unfortunate young man or young woman or young they who want to take up the role of being a dungeon master, they guide the experience. And so they become in many ways very, very, at a very early age, very cognizant of corporate psychology and how to get a group of people working together. Yeah, so I think it's a really great thing to do.
Yeah, I thought it was fascinating. Like I said, I never got into it, but you know what little I know from what my son was doing with his friends, I thought it was totally fascinating.
Yeah, it can be. I mean, you really can let your imagination run wild. Yes, and it's also good to let people feel as though they have a place at the table. In metaphorically speaking and literally speaking.
For sure. Oh, for sure. Now, you were a former TA's, that teacher's aide?
Yeah. Way back in my early career of teaching, I started off as a teaching assistant.
Okay.
And that's always a great thing to do.
Right, yeah. And an external instructor.
Yeah, that's teaching assistant kind of graduates to external instructor.
Oh, okay. I never heard that term, external instructor.
An external is it varies from institution to institution, but basically you're what they might call in the United States an adjunct. Oh, it means that you're contracted from one semester to the next with no promise or no ongoing contract or benefits.
Oh,
it's one that it's a position that people do as a sort of transitionary period between getting a position.
Okay. All right. I'm going to keep going back if you don't mind.
Yeah,
It's
no worries.
Fun. You were a former performer at Green Thumb Theatre. Where was that?
Oh, Green Thumb, I think they're still here in Vancouver.
Okay.
They're a remarkable theater company that's been around forever, and they do children's theater. And doing a tour as a young actor for a touring theater company for young people is probably the most character-building experience one can do. We were on the road for 6 months, and we went to all the small towns and small areas of remote areas of British Columbia in a van with our set in the back and our small cast and our stage manager were on the road. And yeah, I think we performed, I couldn't even count. It was usually a performance a day or on average a performance every 2 days over 6 months. And each day at a different location. It was really amazing.
Oh, I think that would be so much fun.
Yeah, and children, young people are really the best audience because you know whether you have them and you also know when you don't have them.
Right, yeah. Now let's see. You've done lots of performing. You studied voice and classical text.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, Canada has it did have a thing called the National Voice Intensive. And that was it was kind of a world-class event. David Smuckler, who was the head teacher of this, he had his own curriculum that he developed through his work with Kristen Linkletter. And these are voice coaches that really, it's a style of voice training that is sort of fallen out of fashion now, but I really think it should come back because it really has to do with understanding the physical blocks that you have in your voice and that they are so often entangled with psychological or emotional blocks.
Okay.
And once you work through them simultaneously, it frees your voice, and the feeling of transformation and freedom on people when they finally understand what's holding their voice back.
Right.
It's amazing. It's amazing to see them change and grow. And that intensive was usually 6 weeks in the summertime, and it was always a magical time.
Right. One other thing I find interesting about actor and actresses is sometimes it's like there could be a good actor, but their voice always sounds the same. Like you can see them in one movie after another, but they're always, their character might be different, but they have that same voice. And I'm thinking, should they? I don't know.
The voice is really the true nature of your spirit, right? They always say that that's kind of how you voice yourself in the world, and it's really people really identify with that. And I think an actor would be probably reluctant to change their voice intellectually because it would make them sound less true. I mean, we have a saying in English. We say, "Oh, that rings true to me. It sounds like the truth." And I think so. I think I also know that in film, people work with a very modulated voice, which means that you tone your voice way down and use your resonators inside your body a lot more, and it's very mic'd. And it gives a feeling of intimacy. And when you're working with that level of vocal production, yeah, it's very hard to put on a voice, unless of course you have to do something technical like an accent or something like that. Yeah. But then there's fun voice. There's voice acting where you can do cartoon voices, and there are some actors who have very flexible voices with lots of character, and it's quite amazing to watch them work as well.
Right. And people who can do like voiceover, that's another thing too, right? Like my daughter should be doing voiceover because she can sound, she's 41, but she can sound like a 5-year-old, and and it's like it's believable.
Wow. You should put a tape together and submit it.
Well, she keeps talking about it, but she hasn't done it. And the odds of her doing it now are probably getting slimmer all the time. Another thing that you hear a lot of is being our organic self. Okay, so explain for those people who don't do acting or theater what that means.
Well, okay, so I'm going to go. I hope I don't get too deep for you here, because
go for it.
There's the question of being your organic self is automatically problematic, because if I asked you just be yourself, you might go, oh well, which self should I be? Should I be my radio persona, or should I be the mom that I am to my daughter? And one has to always realize that every person is made up of several facets of personality. And so being your authentic self, or being an organic self, is understanding that all of these personalities are you. And to sort of rest and to be relaxed in your body, so that you know that when you are performing, that you don't need to put up a front, or you don't need to put on airs and graces, or put on a persona or a mask. What they really want to know is that you understand yourself well enough to go into every pocket of your own personality and amplify it according to the situation.
Right. Yeah. Okay. One of the things too, again, having taken classes, I just think it's so important to have a good teacher, because not all acting teachers are good teachers, in my opinion. And I say that because I've had one who I think was like, oh, I felt destroyed, Oh,
I'm very sorry that was a bad experience for you.
But it happens, right? It's like anything else in life, that at the end of it, I didn't know who I was supposed to be anymore.
Oh,
and that was really tough, I mean, but at the same time, in all fairness, to that person, I wasn't really good acting material to begin with. So
I think you need to be fair to yourself as well. So the thing is that many times what happens is I might find myself in a directing or a teaching position where I'll say something, and I think that it's being received in a certain way, and it's not. And I'm often surprised by that. So I would suggest that if that happens to somebody in a rehearsal or an audition or training position, to be nice and bring it forward and say, and just use good language to say, like, don't say, for instance, like, you told me this. You would say, oh, when you said that, what I heard was, and to moderate or mediate that conversation and find out what was really meant. Now, if the person is very mean and says, no, I meant you're talentless, then I would suggest that the person probably is not a good acting teacher. But what it probably would do is it would prompt that teacher to use technique better, to use teaching technique better, to guide you more to the goal that he or she or they wanted, rather than to say you simply didn't do well.
Right, for sure. Okay, that's good to know. Again, I think acting was, one of the things I would suggest to anybody who's thinking about it but not sure is volunteer to do a student film.
They're always fun to do. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll also say that when you're on a student film, you'll have the experience of being on set and everything moving around you. And the thing that every actor goes through when they're on a film set for the first time is that it's all about the equipment.
Right.
And you might be asked to do a take over and over and over again. And you might be thinking to yourself, oh my God, I must be horrible. And it really isn't you. It's because there was a shadow or there was a boom shadow in the frame from the microphone.
Right. So now, okay. So I know you got your teaching. I know you're going to be working on the Cantonese production. Do you have anything else coming up in the works?
Well, I am going to be publishing a Spanish translation of my book called Crosspoints.
Oh, okay.
And Crosspoints is kind of like a very easy, I'm not going to say easy, like simplified, but it's a very fresh approach to acting. As you probably gathered from my resume, I've done a lot of different acting techniques.
Yes.
And I think there's a way to weave them together into a very simplified message. And a very good friend of mine who's a very successful teacher down in California says this very simple thing. And he says, all actors need to do is to believe some stuff. And then I know that might seem overcomplicated. You might ask yourself, well, there's a lot more to it if you want to play Hamlet, for example. But that's the core. And so this book really speaks to that idea of the core of acting, which is to understand yourself and to understand that everything that you do in life actually is a performance, but it doesn't mean it's fake.
Right.
That you are in fact performing you.
Oh, okay. Good point. Well, maybe we're going to end it there because I know, you'll soon be getting your delivery.
Yeah.
People don't know what we're talking about, but that's okay. They don't need to.
I left my power cord, just for everybody. I was the stupid person. I left my power cord behind on a trip, and I've ordered a new one on Amazon. And I do have some time, but I've gotten a few alerts saying things like, you have 20% of your battery remaining.
Oh, no. Well, this is a good time to end it then. Thank you. Just to stay on camera for a second, I just want to thank the audience for watching. And you've been listening to Stephen Atkins, and I really enjoy listening to him, so I hope you do as well. And I hope you continue to keep watching the show. Take care, everybody, and peace out.
Bye.
A sense of community, Chilliwack's a place to be. A sense of community where you're free. Rolling through the mountains, rolling through the valley, rolling through paradise with me. It's multicultural, you're sure to see it all. Chilliwack's the place to be, you'll see. Come party in the park, go dancing after dark. Chilliwack's the place to be, you'll see.